So I'm a designer, and I have a confession to make. Sometimes research makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I might even have some fears about doing research. I usually don't like to talk about it or think about it much, but today I thought I'd come out and share all of my research fears out in the open in this intimate setting. All of you have a little index card on your chair. So to start, we'll do a quick exercise. I want you to write something down, and you won't have to share it with anyone, so please be honest. This is just for yourself. I want you to write down a challenge or a fear that you have about doing research in your work. So an example could be, I don't have enough time to do research. I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, is everyone more or less done? Okay, great. So take a second to look at what you wrote. How does it make you feel? This talk is going to be all about fears that we as designers face and challenges that we face when doing research, but also what uniquely positions us as designers to address those challenges and fears. Now, if you were to ask me to write down my fears a couple of years ago, I would write down not just one, but 5. And this talk is going to be all about those 5 fears. I'll tell you a bit about myself first. I am a senior product designer at Loblaw Digital. So Loblaw is one of Canada's largest retailers, or the largest retailer, depending on how you count. And you may have shopped at Loblaw or No Frills for groceries, or maybe you went into a Shoppers Drug Mart, I don't know, once in your life. Those are hard to find. Or maybe you bought clothes with Joe Fresh, or maybe you have a PC Optimum card. So our products, our digital products and our retail products touch millions of Canadians every single day. And what I focus on at work is an online pharmacy portfolio, which is a prescription management application for Shoppers Drug Mart. Now, before I joined the team at Loblaw Digital, I always had this extra layer between me as a UX designer and users, customers, patients on the other end of what I was designing for. So I would normally work with an agency or a consultant, and they would handle the research part, even usability testing. So I would be there at the onset to set the objectives, and then I would be there at the end to hear about the findings. And what attracted me to Loblaw Digital was that qualitative research was embedded in the design practice. So when I joined the team, I was designer number 5. It was a very small team. We did not have dedicated UX researchers. And I had to learn very fast, and oftentimes I felt very shaky in the process. So the first fear that came up for me in this journey is, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if I'm doing research right. I live in the West End neighborhood of Toronto, and my neighborhood has these little community libraries that people set up in front of their homes. So you can leave books there, you can borrow books, it's really nice. So one day, a couple of years ago, I was walking past one of these libraries, and I took a peek to see what's inside. And there was this big book there. It was maybe 400 pages long, tiny print. And it was called something like Qualitative Methods in Organizational Research. And I remember looking at it and thinking, okay, qualitative research, I'm kind of starting to do qualitative research in my work. Maybe I should borrow this book. So I pulled it out, and I was standing on the sidewalk and flipping through it. And I remember in that moment, on that sidewalk with that giant book, it just hit me how much I didn't know. It hit me that there's people who do PhDs in social sciences who specialize in research. There's so many methodologies out there. There's all these frameworks. And it kind of felt like, where do I even start? And that feeling didn't really go away. I think that when you keep doing research in your work, you discover that there's more complex methodologies and there's a lot more rigor that you have to apply. So that feeling about, am I actually doing it right, doesn't fully go away. And so what I realized is we as designers have a unique quality that really positions us so well to add essentially this new field to our design practice. And that quality is our learning mindset. Now, I'm sure that some of you have done many different areas of design. Maybe you're a UX and UI designer. Maybe you've written some copy. Maybe you're a marketing designer or a branding designer. Maybe you've done some coding. Think about all the adapting that you've done in your careers to date. One of my favorite authors when it comes to doing design and research together is Erica Hall. She has this amazing book called Just Enough Research. And for those of you in the audience who are designers and who do research, if you haven't read this book, I highly, highly recommend it. It's kind of like chicken soup for the soul for designers and researchers. It just breaks things down in such an easy way. And so Erica Hall has this quote in her book: "You like a little danger, don't you? To design, to write, to code is to embrace danger, to plunge headfirst into the unknown, making new things out of the constantly changing materials, and exposing yourself to criticism and failure every single day." So I think that all of us have been doing this in our careers to this day anyway, and it's our learning mindset that really positions us to add research to our practice so well. Another fear that I faced as a designer doing research is I cannot be all things to all people, and also my brain might melt. Now, I know that all of you are taking a day of work, stepping away from the computer and your calendar. So what I'm going to show you next may make you cringe. I apologize. This is a screenshot of my calendar during a week when I'm conducting field research. So you can see there's not a lot of white space. And we designers love our white space. What does a typical day look like during a week like this? So in the morning, I would be focusing on designing some complex flows for, let's say, a privacy issue that came up with some of our pharmacy customers. And after that, I jump into a meeting with our development team. And after that, I go into doing a user research session. And what happens then? So I have somebody come in. I have to make them feel comfortable. It's a participant who, this office is a new setting for them. And then I have to run the user research interview. And what happens then is I have to be present in the moment, but I also have to keep this running narrative in my head of everything that we're trying to find out. And if something comes up in that user research interview that we maybe didn't plan to talk about, I almost have to evaluate what do we as an organization know about this problem, and do we want to dive deeper, or is this just a random thing that came up? Do I just move on? So there's a lot that happens in that moment during that user research interview. And once it's done, I jump into a meeting about something else. And it's not even noon yet. So what I think all of us have going on for us as designers is our superpower of being prioritization rock stars. Now, I'm still working on the branding for this. This is not maybe phrased in the best way. If you guys have ideas on how to phrase this better, just message me after. But basically, I think you know what I'm talking about here. All of us as designers are used to having people come to us with conflicting demands on our time. We had to get good at working with deadlines. And even if you didn't start off being good at that, you kind of had to become good at that as a designer. And so when you add research to your practice, that skill is essential. If you're like me, and if you sometimes say yes too much to people, you have to really learn to say no. And one thing to remember about research too is that out of all the hats that we wear as designers, research can be uniquely draining. Vivian Castillo is going to have a talk tomorrow on the main stage about just that, about the emotional toll that research takes on all of us. And for me, I focus on the pharmacy space. I've had days when patients who came in during research sessions would share things with me like, what it's like to beat cancer, or what it's like to juggle multiple medical conditions in your life, or what it's like to be too sick to take care of your child. And so when you listen to all of that, that takes an emotional toll on you. And even if you're not in the health space or the pharmacy space, talking to people in real time and internalizing their stories takes an emotional toll. So we really have to take care of ourselves, and we really have to be a prioritization rock star. And so last thing on that is what I usually do during weeks when I conduct field research is I don't schedule more than 2 or 3 customer research sessions a day. I say no to meetings, just decline, 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 decline. It's okay to decline sometimes. And in the evenings, I don't do a lot of social stuff. I'm an introvert. I have an added bonus of being an introvert. So during the weeks when I do field research, I don't get to see my friends much, and that's okay. Another fear about for being a designer and doing research is I design for real people, but I'm terrified of meeting them. So this is a picture of a meeting room in Loblaw Digital in my current workplace where I've done my very first usability test. And I remember that it was kind of a terrifying experience. I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, the participant is going to come any minute and I'm going to have to do this. And I have been studying the chapter from the Sprint book, from the Google Sprint book, about how to conduct research. And I remember just trying to memorize what questions you're allowed to ask, what questions you're not allowed to ask. And I also didn't want to read off a script, so I didn't want to sound too scripted. I was trying to remember everything we were trying to find out. So there was a lot going on. And so what I think positions us really well as designers to deal with being present in the moment in this unique way is our empathy and curiosity. Now, I know that those words, empathy and curiosity, are so deeply meaningful. I also know that those words are so deeply overused. Like the amount of times I've heard empathy in Medium articles for the past couple of years is maybe in the dozens, probably in the hundreds. So what I actually mean here by empathy and by curiosity. So when it comes to empathy, I think that all of us were drawn to this field because we care about people and we care about our values. We care about our values aligning with the work that we do. And I remember talking to, there's this wonderful VR non-for-profit company called Wish Play in Toronto. I was chatting with the founder, Dave, and he was telling me that he thinks that for designers, our midlife crisis is not buying a Tesla or buying a sports car. It's starting a business that does good in the world. I think that designers every couple of years go through these periods where we really evaluate what am I doing, why am I doing, what am I doing this for? What are the things I'm designing changing in the world? What impact does it make on people? I think that that's a quality that's innate to designers that drew us to this field in the first place. And what I mean by curiosity here is that we as designers, because we work on these products and services for our customers, for our patients, for our users, we are hungry for data. We're hungry to hear what people think about what we're designing. We're hungry to hear how they're responding to it. Does it make sense, right? And so during the moments when research feels unpredictable, empathy and curiosity are the qualities that you already have innately that can really pull you through. The next fear I'm going to share is, it's ugly. How many people are in the audience who started off as a visual designer or more grounded in the visual field? Okay, you're gonna feel me on this one a lot. So I've been trained, formally trained as a visual designer. That's where kind of my main strength and my background lies. And I used to spend hours on designing decks in InDesign and making these sprint plans that were beautiful but so hard to update, but I was so proud of them. And I think that we as designers almost have this obsession with form and beauty, and also with this kind of dream of designing these shiny objects. right? I think I read this Fast Company article that was called Step Away from the Shiny Object. And I know for me it's really hard to step away from those shiny objects sometimes. And what does research look like? Research is messy. This is what my desk looks like during the weeks when I'm conducting field work. There's sticky notes, there's handwritten notes, and this doesn't capture all the messy documents I have on my computer, and stuff just keeps piling up. You know, with every single field research session you do, it just keeps piling on and on. And so behind this obsession with things being beautiful, though, I think that what lies behind that is our strength as storytellers. And that's such an enormous, enormous strength that we have going on for us as designers. Telling stories allows you to make sure that your research actually has impact. Because how do we actually measure research? Is it whether a research study has been finished? Is it whether check mark, I've done my research study? We measure research by whether an action has been taken afterwards. And telling stories positions us uniquely to make that happen. So what you see here is some examples of how I share research insights in my work. And as you can see, none of it is particularly beautiful. You know, I feel like 5 years ago I would be kind of embarrassed to show the slide. What I like to do is put up insights up on the walls for the teams to see. And I kind of stopped worrying about whether I print out these beautiful large posters. I just do like tiled tabloid style printouts. But it surfaces the insights during meetings so that people can, as we're discussing design problems, we can see what our customers have to say. Another really effective way I found in my work to surface research is to embed it in workshops. So one of the techniques that I like to use is map out everything that we found out in any given research initiative, add any quantitative data that we know about our customers, map all of it out, and then basically gather a team together and walk through it together and talk about the next steps. And that idea of bridging the insights and the data that you already know about your customers or your users to what are the next steps going to be, you as a designer can be that bridge, and that's a very powerful thing. The last fear I'm going to share is, if people see my process behind the scenes, they will think my work sucks. So as a designer originally, I think I definitely had that going on. It's kind of like you don't want to share your work until it's more or less done. And then as a researcher, what happens is, first of all, especially when I started off doing research, I felt kind of shaky about conducting those research sessions to begin with. So I didn't want to bring in anyone else from the team into these research sessions. But also, what we hear in these research sessions as designers actually impacts our work. It impacts what we're going to do in the coming weeks or months. So what you don't see here is that there was always a third person in the room, my product manager, and there were people listening in remotely. So how did I get comfortable bringing in people into research, into the live research sessions? What I realized is one of our biggest strengths as designers is making connections. I think that all of you would agree that facilitation is one of the must-have design skills these days. And as a designer, what you're facilitating is groups of people coming together, thinking through design problems, and maybe you're also helping surface design within your organization. As a researcher, you can apply the same skills and facilitate customer empathy. So what you can do is connect one set of human beings, people outside of your company, your users, your patients, your customers, to another set of human beings, which is the teams and groups that work within your company. And that's a really powerful thing. So one of the simple ways I make connections is get people to listen in remotely to my research sessions. There's a setup described in the sprint book, and I think that it's a pretty common practice. it is obvious but very powerful. And another thing I found is, at least in my company, everyone is really busy. I've shown you what my calendar looks like. Everyone else's calendars kind of look like that too. So when you start inviting people into research sessions, sometimes they think, oh, you're sending them 5 new meeting invites a week. So that feels daunting. When you get people to listen in remotely, they can kind of drop in and out. But what I found is, as soon as you get someone to listen in remotely and maybe they're dropping in and out the first time, research is like candy. It's like as soon as people get to hear firsthand from customers or end users, it's just so meaningful and nothing compares to that. And then people just want to be in your research sessions after that. Another way I make connections is find teams within my organization. Who here works in a larger organization, kind of a large matrixed organization? Okay, not that many of you. So what happens in larger organizations, I actually find it kind of fascinating. So what happens is you have teams, large teams of people, sometimes in different buildings, working sometimes trying to devise things for the same customer, getting insights in different ways. Some teams outsource those insights, other teams work with data. You can have marketing teams, branding teams, more data-focused teams, market research teams. You can have multiple qualitative research teams, and they're all kind of dispersed. So part of it is you almost need to do a bit of detective work to find everyone in your company who knows something about your customers, and then connect all of it together and map it all out. And basically for any given design problem, what I try to do is just that. Gather all the knowledge that we have available, map it all out, quantitative and qualitative knowledge, and then look at where are the gaps, what are we actually trying to find out, and how do we answer those questions? Do we answer them with research, or maybe we can answer them with data, or maybe we can answer them with running experiments. So now I'm going to ask you all to look back to your index card, to the statement that you wrote. And I'm going to ask you to flip it over and write the exact opposite. So as an example, if you wrote, I don't have enough time to do research, you can write, I have time to do research. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it seems unrealistic, just write it down. Is everyone more or less done? Okay, great. So take a look at what you wrote. How does this make you feel? And what can you do to make this a reality? Who do you know at work now, or maybe outside of work, who can help you make this a reality? And what superpowers do you have as a designer that can help you in achieving this? Could it be your learning mindset? Think about how much adapting you've done in your career to this date. Could it be being amazing at project management and being a prioritization rock star, maybe? All of us are amazing at that. We had to be. Could it be your empathy and curiosity? The things that got you into this field in the first place? Or maybe what can make this thing that you wrote happen for you is your amazing ability to tell stories. Or maybe it's your ability to make connections. Or it might be something else, something unique to you. I discussed a few ways today of why designers are positioned uniquely well to be effective researchers. And I think that there's a lot of exciting methodologies in our industry now, like the hypothesis and experiments model, for example, where if you're a designer, that makes you so well positioned to do research in that way. But another important thing that I want to leave with all of you is that being a researcher can actually make you the best designer you can be. Nothing compares to hearing firsthand from the customers or users at the other end of the product or service that you're designing for. You internalize that knowledge, you internalize that voice of the customers and users, and that will serve you in your career for the rest of your life. Thank you.